is David Owen.
And this is Mary and Callie Owen.
And this is You Show Me Yours, a podcast where a married couple talks about the movies and television that they loved before the first date. And this time I was made to watch strictly Ballroom.
Yes, it's my very favorite movie of all time. And if you have listened to any of our episodes before, you can probably figure out why. It's an ugly duckling. It's about dance. It's faintly ridiculous and also sort of serious at the same time. And it's got fantastic Australian accents and it's very quotable. So it's got everything that you want in a movie and it's just fantastic. And I love it every time I watch it. It is the 1992 dance romance directed by Baz Luhrmann. His first film that he directed. So if you despise Baz Luhrmann and wish he weren't in your consciousness, this movie is to blame. I'm sorry. But if you love him, then thank this movie. This is the first in what he calls his Red Curtain trilogy, which would make you think that the stories are connected. They're not at all. They really have very little in common. But it's three movies that have aspects of theater as their motif, is what he says, which is a rather weak explanation, but it's this and Romeo and Juliet from 96, I think, and Moulin Rouge from 99. I don't know. This one has dance. The other one has poetry and words. And then Moulin Rouge has what? I don't know. Dance again. I don't know. I don't really see a connection between those.
It's a stage show.
Yeah.
Like Romeo and Juliet.
I suppose.
And this has a lot of aspects of a stage show.
Well, yes. So this originally was a stage play. And he was, I think, in drama school and was just putting it on. And somebody came to see it and was like, oh my gosh, I love this. I want to make a movie out of it. And Baz says, oh, only if I get to direct it. It does have certain elements that you could see working really well as a play. And funnily enough, as many movies do, it started as a play, then it was a movie, and then now there is a musical version of it. So it's back to being a stage play.
Nice.
The latest that I could find was there was a UK tour of it in 2022. I don't think it's been to the US at all, which is too bad because I would love to see it. I don't know if I need a musical version of this, but just I love to see things that I like being repurposed in other forms. I just think that's fun. But
yeah.
Anyway, so first of all, so you told me that you had seen this before in psychology class in high school. I need to know why. After seeing it again, can you remember any of the reasons that it was relevant to your class?
Yes. Watching it again, I remembered more. I couldn't have told you this before watching it again here recently, but yes. So this movie has a couple of themes. You know, I don't necessarily describe it as what you describe it as. Like, I don't think this movie is primarily an ugly duckling romance story.
Maybe not, but to me,
but
that's what jumps out.
Right? I'm saying. So we were shown this to highlight the. We were at the tail end of Gen X, and this teacher was an early Gen X. So he was like in his 20s, maybe closer to 30. I don't remember how old he was. And he was a crunchy dude. He had a ponytail. He was the first day of class in psychology. He was throwing out acronyms and asking us what they meant. And the only one I remember is he's throwing them out. CIA, whatever. And the only one I remember is FBI. And, everybody's like, Federal Bureau of Investigation is like full-blooded Indian. That's like me. And this guy was not a full-blooded Indian.
What?
I do not believe.
What?
But he was trying to demonstrate in his, overly sort of not yet beaten down by the education system sort of way is like, it's another way of thinking, man. This guy looked like he would end a lot of his sentences with man, man. His name was Mr. Callicut.
I had a very similar teacher.
Yeah. And what he wanted us to take away from the movie is that this movie it says it right in the title. It is about being strictly ballroom, aka doing the steps you're told to do in the way you're told to do them, and not forging your own path or making your own steps, which I think is the central theme of this movie. I mean, he is trying to make his own steps in a world that only accepts the exact steps that everybody before you has been doing for generations before, and we don't want the steps to be any different. And if they are different, then they're not only bad to the establishment, but they're a threat to the establishment. But you notice that the steps that are different are the popular ones, the ones that people cheer the most. And his idea in showing this was to show us that, like, you need to forge your own path. Don't let your we were kind of in a nowhere sort of town. A lot of the people, a lot of the girls were pregnant on prom night, or impregnated on prom night. I know of at least a couple of girls in my graduating class who were definitely pregnant at graduation. People who dropped out, people who you didn't see after the 10th grade, which is kind of the year in which you can sort of do that thing. 16 is kind of when you can self-emancipate or whatever, and basically stop going to school if you want to, in North Carolina at the time, at least. And it was, your options were go to work at the furniture factory, the bus factory, the plastics factory, the textile factory, all of which 15 years later weren't even in the town anymore. And he was just trying to tell us, like, even in this rural county school that you are in, you can take a different path. That you don't have to follow the steps. Just because your dad is a farmer doesn't mean you have to quit school at 16 to help out on the farm, et cetera, et cetera. So that was his sort of mission statement with us watching this movie, is like, this is a movie about understanding that you are your own person, and you can take your own steps, and you don't have to take the steps that are laid out before you.
So that's an interesting interpretation. Here is my, I don't know, sort of a counterpoint.
Sure.
So we start out the movie. So Scott is a ballroom dancer and has been doing it since he was 6. I don't know how old he's supposed to be, like 22, 23, something like that. And he's poised to, like, win everything. And we open the film at a competition where it's shown as, like, a response to a problem on the dance floor. He does some flashy steps to, like, he and his partner are, like, stuck in a corner, and to get out of it, he does, like, a flip or whatever, and does all these things. And all the establishment dancers are aghast. And he says, "Oh, the audience loved it." And his coach is like, "Oh, the audience. Well, here are these things technically that were wrong with what you did." And he's trying to, dance his way and everything, but then he is paired up with this novice dancer. Turns out her father is a skilled, like, I don't know, that we don't get the style, flamenco, I think, dancer.
Yeah,
and
they say the name of it.
Well, Paso Doble is the dance that they're doing, but and
they're Spanish.
Yeah, and the father sort of teaches this pair how to do the Paso Doble with, like, the soul and the spirit and the meaning that it was intended to have.
Yeah.
And so that's what Scott and his partner Fran end up doing sort of at the end. And so it struck me that the steps that Scott wants to do at the beginning are not really appropriate for ballroom dancing. But what he does with Fran is much more true to the spirit of it. Like, what the establishment wants them to do is not really true to the spirit of the dance that goes back centuries into another country. So it's kind of unclear, like, what does following your own path look like? Because if it's doing what you want to do, then you're just the guy doing flips on the dance floor and looking weird. But is it being true to? I think there's something to being true to the spirit of an art form and doing it really well, and that's following your own path, kind of, because you are always cognizant of what this means originally. Does that make sense?
Sure. And while I'm just telling you what he wanted us to take away from it,
Mm-hmm.
I think the message is somewhere between what you're saying and what he's saying. I think Scott starts out, so Scott unchecked is Doug, right?
Yeah.
Doug is just gyrating on the dance
This is
floor.
his father.
Yes, Doug is his father, who it turns out also a a generational, once in a generation ballroom dancer who decided to make his own steps.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and his steps are just flash, and it's kind of like Ed Grimley dancing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like Martin Short
Yeah.
dancing as a character. Like it's you know, it's great, it's hilarious, but it's that is doing your own thing.
Mm-hmm.
What Scott ends up doing is he starts out from a place of wanting to do his own thing, and what I think he slowly realizes by meeting Fran and her family and learning the origins of these dances is that he has always been, and then, you know, I think this also kind of applies to what my teacher was trying to teach us in a way, even though I don't think it was explicitly his message. What he has been told is right and true and strictly ballroom is not even.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he discovers that these dances that have been watered down, that what he's straining against in not responding to the strictly ballroom way of dancing is that he can tell that there's something more, that these dances don't want to be constrained to form and function and steps and precise steps, and that they want to be felt. And he's feeling the steps that are in him, but he doesn't know how to channel them with the passion that he learns from Fran's father, and for her whole family. So yeah, I mean, I think that he sort of starts out wanting to do his own thing, and like I said, his dad is Scott without Fran, without this, with these people who can teach him, like, you know, the when Scott does the paso doble, they all laugh at him, with all the Spanish people.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm doing it technically perfect. What are you talking about? And why are you laughing? And they show him, like, that it's not about being technically perfect, that it's about feeling the passion and feeling the rhythm and you know, bringing it from your heart, not from your head, or for, you know, so I think,
or even from your feet,
right? Yeah. So Scott is right. Scott is strictly ballroom, is dancing from your head. Scott is trying to dance from his feet, and he learns to dance from his heart. And yeah, so I mean, I think the actual takeaway that I take away from this movie is, buck tradition, but sometimes in doing so, you actually find the heart of the tradition, the real way. Like, I struggle with this, and I don't want to get too far off the subject here, but I struggle with this as a Southern man. A lot of what I think of as my traditions and the things that I remember from childhood are inherently hurtful and racist and demeaning to others and to women, to other races. And there's a process to find the truth that is in those. I ran away for a long time away from bluegrass and country music, and, you know, ran to rock and roll and heavy metal and all these, you know, punk. And as I get older, I keep coming back to the roots of this Appalachian music that my grandmother used to play on her mandolin, and you know, banjos and these traditional instruments. I know banjo. I know the history of a banjo. It is not an Appalachian. I know all that stuff. But finding that these traditions that seem boring or negative, they have a root to them. That there is a passion and a meaning to them that is beyond what has been sort of calcified on top of that over the years. You know, that country music is not this redneck music for racists and good old boys and trucks and Confederate flags and all that bullshit that the like, you know, listen to Willie Nelson and Waylon Jennings and Chris Christopherson and Johnny Cash and understand that these guys were anti-government rebels who were, you know, against the police. And the, you know, these guys were not, you would not find Willie Nelson is not going to have a Blue Lives Matter sticker. You know, these guys were the spirit of sort of Southern rebellion, but in the good way. So like I struggle with that. And in a certain way, Scott in this movie is struggling with that because he comes from a ballroom dancing family. And his entire community is built up around it and his entire life is built up around it. And he's struggling against the constraints of that, sort of intuitively knowing that they're not right, but he hasn't figured out how to break out of them until he meets Fran and her family and gets to see the origin of some of these dances. And I think that there's a unwritten sequel to this movie where they figure out the tango and all the heart of all these other dances too.
Yeah, he finds a Brazilian to teach him samba and the other stuff. Yeah, well, and it's not really. They don't point it out, but it's very visible on screen. The sort of the kind of the couple with the opposite style is Ken Railings, who's held up as this like, well, kind of like an old reliable dancer. Scott's mom is like, he's always been a beautiful ambassador for, I can't do the accent, but he drinks and like it's funny, you can hear him like his joints hurt when he's doing the moves and stuff, but he does like the splits and all these things that are very showy, but like in an approved way. And he cycles through a couple of partners through the movie. None of what they're doing is traditional for whatever the dance is. They're just doing these ridiculous things like synchronized bows and and like not so like they're meeting the establishment standards, but they're not the soul of the dance. I mean, you know, the easy point to make is that over time the strictly ballroom way of dancing has gotten further and further away from the actual dancing. And like there are ways to be showy within the strictly ballroom, but they are also very precisely mapped out for you, and the exact steps of how to be, you know, the bad boy of ballroom dancing are, you know, laid out in a book and that, by what's his name? Barry Fife.
Barry Fife. Yeah.
And that honestly, that's probably true of a lot of art forms that I do not know well enough to identify the different paths that they've gone down.
Oh, yeah.
But like I think so Irish dancing is one that I know a little bit about. Like if you trace it back to its roots centuries ago, like it's done with very stiff arms and you only move from the waist down. And I heard something once that I think is charming, that it's done the way it's done so that you spend very little time, your feet spend very little time on the ground so that you don't wear out your shoes. Because the Irish at the time were so poor that they couldn't afford shoes. And then as it gets more flashy and Riverdance comes in, and that was, on the stage show, they use their arms all the time, and they're doing that. Like there's and I love the show Riverdance, but it blends Irish dancing with a lot of other different ethnic dances. And there's one number that is really powerful, but it's a pair of Irish dancers and a pair of hip hop tap dancers, and they're doing each other's styles. But anyway, all that to say, the Riverdance style of Irish dancing is not what comes from the original spirit of it. And if you know that, then that's fine. But if someone was like, oh, I'm going to do Riverdance in the competition, and then everyone accepts that, like, okay, that's fine. But what you're doing is great, but it's not Irish.
Yeah.
Dance.
I mean, Riverdance is a great example because at a certain point, we are at that point. If you ask people what traditional Irish dancing looks like, they will say Michael Flatley. They will say Riverdance. So the caricature has become a substitute for the tradition. And I think that, that happens, I think, in a lot of ways. I think another good example of that, of that is any sport that's judged, right? Like, being able to go back and watch gymnasts from the 70s.
Oh yeah, it's
you
a
know,
whole.
like
It's a totally different
with the
thing.
ribbon, and
Yeah.
and nobody's doing, the balance beam is literally just, it's a miracle that they're balanced on it.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that that is necessarily a bad change. That's more of an evolution, but it's an easy way to say, like, look, this is how this thing started, and this is how it is today. So if you think that people in the 40s were doing, back handsprings and twisting double dismounts, they weren't. They were just struggling to balance on the beam.
Yeah.
And if you wanted to actually be like, the inverse of Strictly Ballroom is someone going to the Olympics and pulling out the ribbon and just doing a single turn on the balance beam and expecting a 10 out of 10.
Yeah. Or like figure skating.
Yeah.
Originally, well, I think both the men's and women's, they've gotten much more powerful since the beginning of the Olympics. But the women in particular, when it started, I don't know when they started having a Winter Olympics, like the 20s maybe. But the female skaters were supposed to be very delicate.
Yeah.
And, like just skimming the ice and do a flip and just like one turn, not too many, and now you've got women consistently do triple spins in competition? Or
I'm pretty sure the women are up to triples now.
And they're just as powerful as men, but there is still this push-pull between maybe women can be powerful, but they have to be delicate and pretty and, smiley and, different. So it's not exactly the same, but you see that transformation happening too. So it's the showiness wins out over time in a lot of things.
Yeah. There's a lot of instances in life where this push pull between traditional and expectations and, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah. So.
And you do wonder, like, how is this movie different if it's Fran as the main character, but in the Scott role, not like, if your main character is female, how is that even a different movie than this is? Different expectations, different, because the women are almost treated as the sort of secondary in this.
Oh yeah. Well, there's yes. I don't know if you know this. Did you know that dancing often is a metaphor for sex?
Yeah. Oh no, I didn't. Is that? That doesn't seem. How does that work?
Yeah. It's you would only notice it if you were an astute observer like me. If you'd watched this movie like 23 times.
I get all my information about dancing from Breakin' 2 Electric Boogaloo. In which dancing is exclusively used as a substitute for gangland warfare.
Oh yes, and the Warriors, don't they dance?
No, the
as
Warriors
gang
don't
warrior.
dance.
Oh no,
the Warriors don't dance.
Okay, sorry.
I think the baseball Furies are out there dancing.
Sorry. Okay. Well, that's how the Savannah Bananas started, right?
They do dancing.
It's dancing is gay. Okay. Anyway, West Side Story dancing.
Yes.
is gang fight. Anyway, back to what I was saying. The gender politics of this movie are not great considering, but whatever. It's not the point. But poor Liz, who is Scott's original partner, and you get they've been dancing together for a while, it seems, and she is not here for his experimental dancing, and he kind of springs it on her mid competition. And it's funny, he's asking everybody, what did you think of my steps? What did you think about my steps? And she says, I don't give a shit about them, we lost. That's what I care about, is winning. And so she ends up with a new partner, and we see them in a hot tub together and snuggling. And the implication is, if you're dancing with someone, you're romantically involved with them or physically involved with them.
Yes.
And then Ken Railings is her new partner. And then later she comes in and she's wailing. It's just, Ken dropped me. And we never see Ken with her again. So this bouncing around. I noticed though, when she comes in and she says, oh, Ken dropped me, she's still... So when she's with Scott, all of her clothes are yellow because that's their competition outfit is yellow. Ken's competition clothes and his partners are all pink and white. Mm-hmm. And when Liz comes in and she says, oh, Ken dropped, she's still got a pink scrunchie in. So it's like she was mid change, something. She's still, anyway. Ken, we learn, is a fading star. He's drunk for all of his competitions, and at some point he says, I can't go out there, I've lost the old magic. And he only wins because they're fixing competitions for him, which is fantastic. And he, at the end, he is competing with Tina Sparkle, which is the best name
Yes.
ever. And she's like this. She actually is a real dancer, but she's very funny for what the movie gives her to do.
Yeah.
She is her partner is retiring, which is odd. Like it's just before like the grand competition finale this season, and he's retiring like a week before. I'm like, why?
But it's also funny because it's like it demonstrates what a part this plays in this presumably small Australian town that he's retiring because he needs to put more attention into his landscaping business.
Yeah, that to me sounded like that was cover for like has a drug addiction or
sure, but I'm just saying like I like to think that it isn't and that it is. It's just literally that because you see there's another guy who's working at a gas station, I think at one point.
Yeah.
Like
and
that these guys like that this is made out to be the biggest thing in the world, but this is just this tiny little thing in this tiny little town where where there's only a privileged few like Scott who aren't sacrificing everything to make this happen. And he's only doing it because his parents are able to teach and, all this stuff.
It's kind of like, speaking of Olympic sports, I don't think they do it anymore, but it used to be that Home Depot would have ads during the Olympics being like, we're proud to support these athletes. And what they mean by support is they work in the paint section.
Yes.
And then on the weekends they train and we give them that freedom. And I was like, if you really want to support them, maybe just give them money and don't make them, talk to me about the sheen of the paint. But.
Yes, but also there are probably hundreds of athletes that are working at places like that. Like most Olympic sports in America do not rate a villa for the team to train together, And also you see like you watch these competitions, there's like 10 heats of people trying to get 3 spots on the track team. Like you can't sponsor all of them.
Yeah.
I think when it comes to that sort of stuff, like you can say, okay, we have a government program where we will select the best and pour resources into them, or it is just sort of a free for all. And once you get to the highest level, maybe there's some sponsorships or some aid.
Unsurprisingly, the U.S. approach to Olympians is very capitalist.
Yes, of course.
Survival of the fittest.
Naturally.
Yeah. Let's see. A word about Paul Mercurio, who plays Scott. Oh, this poor man. So this was his first film role. I'm not sure if he was in the play first and then got in, and he tried to have an acting career after this. He was in this movie Exit to Eden with Rosie O'Donnell and Dan Aykroyd, which was like vaguely, it was like criminals, but also S&M too. And
they go undercover. O'Donnell and Aykroyd go undercover at a S&M resort to catch a criminal.
Which I cannot imagine did very well. And
I remember it being funny, but I remember at the time the joke was just, hey, Rosie O'Donnell's fat and she's in a bustier or whatever.
Who wants to have sex with her? Right. Yeah, no, I remember that too. Yeah. And he's been in a couple of other ones, including this one Australian film that is absolutely bonkers. If I can pull up the plot. Was
he in the Australian film Australia?
He was not.
That seems like a Baz Luhrmann would do him a solid and throw him into
that's right.
A movie in Australia.
You know what's funny? So I talked about the Baz verse.
Yeah.
But he does not seem to have brought actors from this onto his other movies. Maybe because they were much more Hollywood focused, and this is very Australian.
I think I think he is one of those guys. There are certain directors who bring everybody with them. Kevin Smith is a guy who sort of brought a bunch of people with him.
Aaron Sorkin does that.
Aaron Sorkin. There are a handful. And he strikes me like if you just look at his filmography, that he goes from this to Romeo and Juliet, it is just he is immediately into the Hollywood system, and then Moulin Rouge after that, and yada 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 through the years. But
there are some people who have shown up a couple times, like Nicole Kidman was in Australia and Moulin Rouge, but that is, I think, the exception that proves the rule.
As like at the time, arguably the the most famous actor from Australia. I think
Mhm.
perhaps Hugh Jackman has eclipsed
Yes.
her in the years since, but who also is in Australia, right?
Yes.
Yes. So,
Yes.
you know,
Well, here. Okay, so this is the absolutely bonkers movie
okay.
that he was in. It's called Welcome to Whoop Whoop, a
Nice.
1997 Australian screwball comedy film starring Jonathan Shex. I don't know if we ever figured out how to say that from That Thing You Do, and a whole bunch of Australian actors, including Paul. And I can't even tell you the plot because it's like the Wikipedia entry is like 16 paragraphs, but it's he Jonathan, what's his face, has a fling with somebody and ends up getting taken to her hometown, and it's sexcapades and murder, and then they escape, and it's yeah. And anyway, Paul Mercurio plays a hairdresser who is somebody's widow and is eventually just killed by the vicious overlord of the town. I mean, like,
Sweet.
what the hell? It's kind of like Mad Max meets a rom-com. It's completely bizarre, and although I really need to watch it now because it's so insane.
Oh yeah, yeah,
But so he's been in like that kind of thing.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that does happen. Like, I think there are these roles that could be career definers, and then actors just disappear. The
Yeah.
guy who played Mozart in Amadeus,
Yeah,
just just gone.
Yeah.
After, like, there are people who just have these roles that are just where you think like, oh, that's a star maker, and then they're just
and
gone.
it just doesn't work.
I mean, it happens like That Thing You Do.
Yeah.
What's his name? Shades, the drummer. Like, that should have been his star vehicle.
Yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah.
He should have come out of that as the cool dude.
Yeah.
And his career just kind of floundered.
There's
since.
only so many spots for movie stars, and it just didn't work. So
Yeah.
But Paul Mercurio ended up when So You Think You Can Dance and all that stuff became big, and every country had its own version. He did some stuff on that, and now he is in the Australian Parliament.
Cool. So, he seems like he's doing all right.
He's done okay. But 15-year-old me watching this thought that he was going to be in every movie ever, and I would just be able to grow old drooling over him, and it did not exactly work out.
Yeah, he always, in my head, at this time, like, what is this, 92, 93, whatever, I could not separate him and Tim Roth. Like, envision Tim Roth in Pulp Fiction.
Okay.
Honey Bunny, he's got the same floppy hair coming over the sort of soccer cut with the hair coming over the front. And in my head, they were just the same person.
Okay.
And also because he was also doing the weird stuff, like the Tarantino stuff, and just seemed like these guys, or at least there were times where I was like, was he in Strictly Ballroom? And then I would like no, it was that guy was Australian.
Okay.
And he's not. Yeah.
Right.
Just
15-year-old me says they have nothing in common, but okay, I will.
Oh, sure.
I have definitely mixed people up. Like, you always mock me when I say I mix Bill Pullman up with Bill Paxton.
Oh, sure.
And as we know, I mix up Billy Zane with the guy who actually is in The Mummy.
Yeah.
So yeah, there we go. Something that I noticed about this, watching this as an adult. So Scott's mom, Shirley, is really kind of terrible.
Oh yeah.
And her aesthetic doesn't help. She's got sort of garish makeup on and huge earrings a lot of the time, and she's doing this thing where like she won't ever let herself be upset, and so if she is upset, she goes off in a corner and she goes, happy face, and does this wide eyes and a rictus grin and everything, and pastes it on and goes back out. Well, that the wide eyes with crazy makeup, and she's like in her 50s or 60s, like, it's not a good look.
Yeah.
And but she's hilarious in how terrible she is.
Oh yeah.
At the opening, they've got these like talking head interviews, which I imagine in the play version was just characters standing on stage and doing soliloquies. This is after Scott has done his crazy steps at the competition. She's like, "Did I fail him as a mother? How did I go so wrong?" Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So there's a point where Scott has said that he's not going to dance with Tina Sparkle. He wants to dance with Fran. And this is like, everyone is horrified, like,
Yeah.
you know, because they think of Fran as this plain beginner who's got no talent, you know, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. And he has been secretly training her for months,
Yes.
for weeks.
Yeah, this all happens very fast. Like, I don't think you can get that good in weeks. But
well, and
regardless.
I think that, yeah. And I think that they do a good job of handling that by making it the shift to her traditional family dance, where she actually is the expert versus him.
Yeah.
So it's like, by the end, you're like, oh, yeah, I believe she could hang with him because they're literally doing her.
Yeah.
You know.
I think also, like, they make a point of saying she's been dancing with a girl because there weren't enough partners for her to have her own. And that's got to be tricky. And there are some things where it looks like she's trying to lead when she's not supposed to. So, like, if you have been doing one side of the gender and you switch to the other, of course, that's going to be tough. But anyway, so he's stormed off from the competition, and, you know, he finally comes home. And she's there, and she is furious at him, understandably from her point of view. And she says, you know, you're hurting everybody who, you know, who's taught you. What about Les? He's taught you everything you know. Les is the owner of the dance studio and sort of like a surrogate uncle. And he says, I'm bored with it. And she says, bored with it? I've been with your father for 25 years. Do you think I get bored? Of course I do. And at the time, like when I'm 15, I'm like, oh my God, she's such a bitch. Blah, 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 blah. But now, having been married for, how long has it been? Going on 19 years. And we've been together 22 years. I kind of get it.
Sure.
It doesn't mean I'm bored with it and I want to throw it all away. It means it doesn't always excite me in the same way that it did at the beginning, but I know that at its core, it's still good. And that's why I'm going to stick with it, because at some point I will be excited again.
Yeah, I think that's that is a coming of age thing, a maturity thing. Like when you're young, you think that, or even when you're first dating someone or first married, you think that this is what it's going to be like all the time. And then fast forward 20 years and like somebody has got to, you know, renew the car tags and power wash the deck and take the car in for an oil change. And like, it's just, they're just one of the things that I think is the most difficult about meshing with someone in a relationship is the roommate stuff.
Yeah.
Just figuring that part out, because that's, nobody ever tells you that. Like movies and stories and all of these things, and even sometimes people give you this false impression that it's just going to be this, you're going to float on a cloud for the whole time, but like somebody's got to vacuum the floors and empty the dishwasher.
Or you think like, oh, we just have to like the same kind of movies and the same sports teams and then it'll be fine. Like, no, you need to have, you know, I don't know, like Jack Sprat. One of you eats the fat of the meat and one of you eats the lean, or like you both need to have the same attitudes about money, or
it really is like
whatever. You like the same degree of blankets on the bed. Like these are the things.
There's this, it's the simplest things that are also, liking the room you sleep in the same temperature is probably far more important than one of you being a reader and one being a movie watcher.
Yeah. But I think like the idea of, you know, I'm bored with it is, I think he's not bored with it. He is dissatisfied with the, like, and he finds what he's been doing soulless. So he's not really, I don't think he really means bored.
There's something to be said about, he is like a lot of people who are really good at something at a really young age. He's bored of just being like kind of the best at it, and he wants a challenge.
Yeah, that too. But I don't think that he means I'm bored with it, therefore I want to ditch it.
Yeah.
But that's what she takes it as. And I think regarding marriage, like, because according to the story, she's not really been very happy with Doug, or Doug has not been a person to be happy with, probably since before Scott was born. But she's still with him. So there's something keeping them together. And then at the very end of the movie, after Scott and Fran have done their show-stopping dance at the competition, Doug and Shirley dance, and they seem very connected and sweet. And you hope that they fix whatever was not working in their marriage, and they come back together and find each other, and both find some joy in dance, and you know, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I think that the thing is, the thing that has been keeping their relationship from happening is the web of lies that's revealed in the final act
Yeah.
around the Doug being making up his own steps and them, and who would dance with Shirley at the competition, and all these different things that all went into this deception that has built kind of the life. They are essentially together because of that deception, because they are allowed to teach, and being allowed to teach means that they can have Scott getting the training he needs. And so like every bit of their life traces back to this one mistake that Doug made, quote unquote mistake, that Doug made, and the ramifications of all that.
Which is actually due to Barry Fife's deception. So in the final act, Barry Fife, who is like now the Australian Commissioner of Dance, or, some big muckety muck thing. Well, he's
the regional, like it's not even, like I was saying before, of like it's made to be a big deal, but it's podunk. It's like, Barry Fife, the regional lead of the junior secondary,
True. Well, considering, so this guy is played by the guy who played Muriel's dad in Muriel's Wedding. Yeah. And it's the same kind of thing. Like that guy also was a big fish in a little pond. So,
he's great. He's a great, I think every acting scene has its, and by scene, I mean like local, Australia, England, Italy, I'm sure they have their just indispensable character actors. Yeah. And this guy seems like one of those for Australia at this time.
It's very shorthand. Like you're like, okay, I know who this guy is. It's a Bill Hunter, I think.
Yeah. Like we need that, like he is a guy you would describe that. And then someone goes, oh, he's available. Yeah. Like, get him.
Yeah. So he tells Scott, that, your parents were competitive dancers and your father got this idea in his head that he wanted to do his own thing. And he insisted that he dance the steps at the Pan Pacific Grand Prix. That's the big thing.
The Pan Pacific Grand Prix.
And they always say the whole thing. Yeah. And they lost, and I won. I was lucky enough to win, and that's why I'm where I am today. Yeah. And the shock sent Doug crazy. I'm sorry, that's not the accent either. But and you need to dance the proper way so you win and fix your dad's broken heart. Well, it turns out Doug didn't dance at the Pan Pacific Grand Prix.
Yeah, Doug never got to do his own steps.
Right.
Yeah.
Barry told Les. Keep in mind, Les is Les,
as they say. I love that. It's like there's some European accents that do that, but Australians especially, they say Les as Les. Les,
who is the studio owner. He told Les that Doug wanted Les to dance with Shirley.
Right.
And they didn't. I mean, they probably did fine, but not as well as
they would have
as Barry. And he probably told Shirley something too. Like
basically,
Doug says,
Barry
lied to everybody.
Has created this web of lies where he told every single person something different.
Yeah, and Barry is also the one who is fixing the competition for Ken to win. Yeah, and probably has his fingers in another million pies. And he's
got his own dance tape.
Yes,
that he sells.
And he's got this step that he's teaching people, the Bogo Pogo, which it turns out doesn't actually exist.
Sure.
Which is good because it's basically just a lot of pelvic thrusting.
Right. It's just a reason for him to creep on the female partner.
Yes. And I lost where I was going with this.
Web of lies.
Yeah. So Doug realizes that Shirley danced with Les because they were both lied to. Yeah. Not because they were rejecting him, and that seems to boom. Lift the veil. These people all need therapy, but
sure.
The Doug, by the way, the actor's name is Barry Otto, the father of Miranda Otto from Lord of the Rings and other things. I Am No Man.
Yeah.
I forget her character's name.
Yeah.
And he's been in a bunch of other things too. He and Paul Mercurio were actually in a movie after this. It was like a bunch of inmates at like a mental hospital put on a Mozart opera or something, and it's it's like slapstick and over the top and ridiculous and heartwarming at the end and blah 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 blah. Very. I remember watching it and liking it, but So I think he's another sort of name in Australian cinema that haven't seen him in.
He's
as
got a
many
great
things,
look.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and he's very hangdog here. Like he's got, his hair is sort of long in the front and it's kind of limp and greasy in middle part and like plastered to his face. And he's got these aviator glasses and wears, I think, like knee socks with sneakers and shorts.
Oh yeah, he's give him an extra little gut.
He's a total dork.
Yeah.
But then I've seen some other pictures of him and he's kind of dreamy looking. I'm like, oh, you really dorked him down there. Jeez. Yeah. Okay, that sounds like an inappropriate phrase. You dorked him down.
I'm gonna dork you down.
That sounds okay. Let's not introduce that ever again.
Yeah. But this is probably as good a time as any to talk about the thing that I love about this movie. So I am, if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you will probably know that I love off kilter sort of stuff. The movies that I have brought to this podcast are from the likes of the Coen brothers and Tim Burton and Terry Gilliam, and that is the sort of stuff I love, right? And the thing that I love about this movie is the pitfall that many of these guys, these quirky directors, fall into is that they sell out. Essentially, I think "sell out" is an overused term, but I think that it's the quickest shorthand.
Or they tone down their quirkiness.
No, it's not even that. It's that they sell out, right? It's that they understand that it is almost impossible. So the Coen brothers, we talked about this in one of our first episode, Raising Arizona.
Yeah.
They have this way of casting people that are interesting looking, that have weird affectations, that have, an odd deformity, borderline deformity, that just have, an odd and sort of homey, like down home sort of country look about them. The clerk in I just want to know if I need pins or fasteners. Well, they go up around the butt there, and they, son, you got a panty on your head.
Yes.
Well, which is it, young feller? You want I should freeze or you want I should drop? That's what this movie has, right?
Yeah.
Les and Barry and Doug, all of these characters, Tina Sparkle, they are all these caricatures, like these brilliant caricatures when they do this sort of stage performance to sort of show you the flashback.
I love that part. Yeah.
It's this unspoiled sort of Baz Luhrmann that you see that is whimsical and goofy and doing these strange things, things that challenge the, movies often want to be seen as this like omniscient observation of events as they're actually happening, and going into a stage production to describe a flashback. That is a sort of a unique thing that a director of a certain creativity does.
It's very like the seams are showing, but in a way that makes it artful and not sloppy.
It's turning film into something more, into just something that is interesting and brilliant, and something explicitly like that, like Baron Munchausen, that is a play within a play, and you're like, when is he describing this stuff, or is it actually happening? And you're flashing back and forth, and then some of it is explicitly like set pieces, and you can see that they are, and and the uniqueness of the characters and the faces and the ways of speaking, they are all Coen brothers. There, it's early Tim Burton, it's Terry Gilliam, and Luhrmann, along with Burton, both they packaged that and sold it, and that's why I say sold out, not watered down.
Okay.
Baz Luhrmann didn't water down; he watered up. If you look at Moulin Rouge, Romeo and Juliet, Moulin Rouge, he leaned into all of this, but in the most sanitized way possible. Yeah. It's like he got the most colorful box of crayons he could find and colored as precisely inside the lines as he could.
Yeah.
Whereas the Baz Luhrmann that made this got the colorist, got the most colorful crayons, and there weren't even lines.
Yeah.
And he and he made a masterpiece.
And it works somehow.
So certainly after Moulin Rouge. And he takes a break and he does some other stuff, Australia and some other smaller stuff.
Australia is very
But
slick.
by the time he gets to like Elvis, he is a caricature of himself in the same way that in Alice in Wonderland and Willy Wonka, Burton is a caricature of himself.
You might say they are Ken Railings.
Sure. Yeah. But and that's the thing I love about this movie, and the thing I love about Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Edward Scissorhands, these early movies from the directors, because, you know, Gilliam stayed true to himself. Mm-hmm. He continued to make weird niche movies that never made it big. The Coen brothers largely stayed true to themselves. I think they are the only quirky directors in Hollywood that ever made a truly top 5, you know, all-time movie and kept that quirk intact. You know, No Country for Old Men is the best postmodern Western that anybody will probably ever make. Mm-hmm. And to still have the, you know, how much have you ever lost on a coin flip? Mm-hmm. You know, well, I don't know what I'm flipping for. How can I call it if I don't know what I'm flipping for? And that guy is so, you know, he belongs in that weird store that he's in, and the guy that helps him on the road, you know, where's the nearest airport, friend? Well, if you're going down to Dallas, you're going to want to go down to, you know, that guy, like that. And that is in a movie that is an all-time great. And they stayed true to that, and they kept that quirk, and it made it all better somehow. Yeah. And that's the path that I wish all of these guys could have taken, stayed true to themselves and still found a way to make something great. Mm-hmm. But you've got the Burtons and the Lermans who just made this like Hollywood packaged version of themselves and sort of exploited their own image to try to find success. And then you've got the Terry Gilliams who stayed so true to themselves that they labored in relative obscurity for their entire career.
You know, it occurs to me, using sort of the motif of, you know, Scott and the dance and the, you know, the ballroom that he'd been doing just changed little by little, and it got so far off from the original. I think with any art form, you kind of have to keep in mind, you know, like, okay, these are the 5 core rules. Mm-hmm. You know, like if you're the Coen brothers, okay, we always want interesting people and quirky dialogue, and you know, like these are the 5 things. And you know, like when we're doing Paso Doble, we've got, you know, I don't even know what those would be. And you sort of a check, like, okay, we still meet these 5 core rules. We are true to the art that we want to create. Yeah. But I think lately, in so many areas, not even art, but just everything, there's an ethos of we don't want any rules ever. Everybody's opinion is valid. The way that you communicate anything is valid. How will you want to present yourself is valid. Like everything is valid, and rules are dumb, and rules are for squares, and we're just going to do whatever. And that's how you end up so far from where you started in some of these things.
I think in a lot of cases, yeah. I mean, and this sort of stuff is cyclical, where people, you know, they don't want to do the rules. And it happens, you know, Hitchcock was a rule breaker when it came to cinema. And then his rule breaking became the rule. Yeah. And, you know, Spielberg, you know, took Ford's rule breaking and made it a gospel, you know, if something's in the middle of the frame, it's boring, you know, like he took, and sometimes you look at greatness and you take the wrong things away. I think the people who are truly successful are like the Coen brothers. They are like, these are the 5 things that make it a Coen brothers movie. And we aren't ever going to make a movie that has all 5 because that's Raising Arizona. Mm-hmm. And we can't do that anymore, because when we tried with The Lady Killers, which I would argue is the Coen brothers at their most self-parody. Tom Hanks is like Clooney? A colonel. No, Tom Hanks is like they do a bank robbery and Tom Hanks looks like Colonel Sanders. It is a movie that is quirky for the sake of quirky. Like it's checking off all these Coen brother quirky things. It's got the interesting characters. It's got the outlandish dialogue. and it falls flat.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Hudsucker Proxy is genuine because the weirdness is in service of the story.
Mm-hmm.
The Raising Arizona is genuine because all of that bizarreness is new and in service of the narrative, and it's, you know, it's layered.
Mm-hmm.
Tim Burton continues to make movies that are he's hitting all 5 of those rules. And I think Lerman in a similar way is making movies that are hitting all 5 of those rules. And I think, yeah, when you really start to understand yourself and who you are, you understand that like 3 of those things makes a good Coen Brothers movie.
Mm-hmm.
All 5 makes it look like we are trying to imitate ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you want to give some amount of that, you know.
Yeah. I think in a lot of art forms, too much freedom is actually paralyzing.
Oh yeah.
You need a couple of rules or guidelines or borders, and then you can play within that. Or, you know, like you can, you know, I don't know, you can use any shade of blue, but it's got to be blue. Or you can, you know, like you need something.
Guardrails. I mean, I think some of the worst movies that have ever been made are when some visionary director who like had one really big first hit made his follow-up movie,
and the studio was like,
and they gave him all the money he wanted,
budget,
and you know, I'm sure I could think of 10 of these if I had the time, but here on the moment I'm blanking on one. But you know, it sometimes that I think Kevin Smith is a great example, you know, of when he is in that indie mindset, that guerrilla filmmaker.
Mm-hmm.
He puts out, you know, something like Red State, which I think is one of his most underappreciated movies, which was kind of at a low point in his career, sort of, so to speak. But then you have like the cash-in movies, some of the Jay and Silent Bob stuff that were just like, I'm striking while the iron's hot. Dogma just came out and people love this Jay and Silent Bob. And, you know, and I think that when he has to struggle for it and fight for it, you know, there's no Clerks 3 feels like a soulless thing, whereas Clerks 1 is, you know, one of the most, I think, true feeling movies that especially someone who worked in a lot of retail, you know, has ever sort of seen, and just lived in a, you know, sort of a weird little town and with weird friends and weird situations. Yeah. So I think it is, there's something to be said for limitation, guardrails, whether it's money, it's rules, it's whatever it is.
I was listening to a podcast about the series Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, which is Tina Fey's project. And that was originally intended to go on NBC. And so the first season, the first set of episodes, they made sure it was 22 minutes. And then after that, it was on Netflix and they had freedom. And I think Tina Fey has said the first season was much better. Yeah. Because we had limits.
You have that a lot. You see a lot of these series, you do see that they sort of are almost self-policing in, so, you know, we were watching the 4th season of Stranger Things and be like, oh God, this is 90 minutes long. Like, you know, and I'm sure the 5th season is going to be the same way. I've said there's going to be some 2-hour episodes.
It makes you self-edit. Right. And you realize what's worth keeping.
And then you see these like Marvel shows where they put out the television stuff. Like there's I started watching the one Echo, which is not going into talking about it, but those are like 20, you know, 22, 24 minutes each. Like they are clearly, there was someone there going like,
it's very crisp.
You have a production budget. You have, we want the edit to meet this, you know? Yeah. And I think that helps. And I think that it takes, sometimes it takes someone telling, you know, like, what is it? You know, Howard Hughes and his big, you know, his big plane and his big movie and his, you know, when you have all this money and no one to tell you no, you end up making some real crap.
Yes. Well, as in many arenas, you need someone to tell you no sometimes. It's good. Yes. It's good for the character. Last thing about the movie, I love the little sister.
Oh,
she's fantastic. Yeah. When Liz comes into the studio and she and Scott are fighting, this is early on, and Scott's like, what do you want? And she says, what do you want? I'll tell you what I want. I want Ken Railings to walk in here right now and say, Pam Short's broken both her legs and I want to dance with you. Pam Short being his first partner. And then cut to Pam Short in a car accident and breaking both her legs. Cut to Ken Railings walking in, spotlight on him, and he says, exactly, Pam Short's broken both her legs and I want to dance with you. And you know, And the little sister's like, that was unexpected.
Yeah.
Like, she just gives all these lines to like just undercut the ridiculousness. And I love her. And she clearly, like, she's dancing too. And she clearly loves her parents, even though they're bonkers. And I just want her to have a happy life after all this. And she, honestly, she is an indication that Doug and Charlie love each other enough to have had sex once
one more
8
time.
or 9 years before. So like there's hope for this relationship,
Yeah,
you know,
right.
like, and she and her partner try to save things at the end for Scott and Fran, and they're so cute. And I just, so I don't even know her name. Kylie, I think. So good, Kylie. I hope you have a happy life. So, and that all the hope Pam Schultz broken both her legs. That's a fantastic thing. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like we've thoroughly chewed over Strictly Ballroom. I could talk about this for hours, but we're gonna put a limit on it because limits are good for creativity.
Yes.
See, but folks, we would love to know what you think about Strictly Ballroom. Were you also sad that Paul Mercurio did not have a strong international acting career? He did have a career in Australia, but he didn't come to the Cineplex in small town Illinois. Let us know what you think. We would love to hear from you. You can get in touch with us a couple different ways. You can send us an email at ysmypodcast. That's ysmy for you show me yours at gmail.com. Or you can find us on Facebook, same handle. You can DM us there, or you can find on our feed links to the latest episodes. We have new episodes every other Wednesday. So 2 weeks from today, no matter when you're listening, there'll be a new episode on the feed or in the podcast platform of your choice. And next time, Dave will be hosting. And do you know what you're hosting next time, Dave? We've been a little all over the place. So.
Yes. So, well, since this is one of your kind of all times, I'm going to do one of my all times. It's also a movie that I'm sure that I know you've seen at least once, but you don't have the reverence for that I have, because I want to be able to talk about this weird, interesting thing that I love. So we're going to watch Labyrinth. Labyrinth.
Okay. I have seen it. I definitely don't love it as much as you. But,
yes.
And I haven't seen it as many times as you, for sure.
For sure. I guarantee it.
Okay. Well, I will do my best to try to love it for you.
I mean, what's not to love? It's David Bowie in his codpiece with songs and puppets, and
it's the puppets that really.
The puppets are great. You got to open yourself up to. These are the same puppeteers. Like, Elmo is in this.
Is he?
The original Elmo is. This is like his big break movie where he got in with Henson. To do puppetry.
It's just I never watched Fraggle Rock and the Muppets or any of that stuff. So because again, it wasn't on PBS.
We'll talk about my reverence for Jim Henson and how he is. I wish he was my dad.
You and a lot of people, I think. So, all right. We'll tune in next time for Labyrinth and love for Jim Henson and Muppets and puppets. In the meantime, this has been You Show Me Yours. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen of the class of 99, wear sunscreen. If I could offer you only one tip for the future, sunscreen would be it. The long-term benefits of sunscreen have been proved by scientists, whereas the rest of my advice has no basis more reliable than my own meandering experience.